Hello, I am Goose, and I was just wondering, you ever played Megaman? What a stupid question. Of course you have. Everyone and their grandma knows Megaman. Personally, while I've only played a few of the games, I'm a pretty big fan of Megaman's world. And more importantly, the Robot Masters. For those who don't know, for some reason, I'll just give you the cliff notes. The Robot Masters are the bosses you fight in each Mega Man game, with most of the games having 8 Robot Masters before you fight the big bad villain Dr. Wily. And with there being 11 Mega Man games as I write this script, that's about 88 Robot Masters in total, not counting all the other spin-off games with other Robot Master-esque enemies of their own. All with their own unique levels, weapons, designs, aesthetics, themes, all that crap. Now, when you put over 100 different character designs before my dweeby ass, I cannot help but want to know which one is objectively better via an arbitrarily made list of specifications and tests. So, a few years ago I spent a good month or so working on the Robot Masters rankings. I even wrote a script for it, but that was like ages ago now, and the script was almost 30 pages long and way too bloated to be any sort of entertaining. So I trashed it, but now that I am more intelligent in the art of making kick-ass videos, I think I can tackle this monumental project with a slightly more level head. Now before we get started, let me just change up the mood a little bit, since this series is going to be its own little special disconnected thing. Much better. I think I'm liking blue. Anyways, which Robot Master is the best? Because of how much work I put into the rankings themselves, I need to tell you about what and who specifically I analyzed to figure out which one of the Robot Masters is the best of the best. Keep in mind, I am only one man, so I can't really prevent my emotions from taking over when writing about something I am passionate about. And something I worked so hard to do, no less. Anywho, I took every Robot Master from Mega Man 1 to Mega Man 11 and ranked them all in 10 separate categories. Each category can earn a Robot Master up to 10 points, so the highest possible score will be a 100, and the lowest possible score will obviously be a 10. Or a 0, depends on how low I think the bar should go. Design, probably the simplest one. It just means how the design looks. Half based off of if it looks off in my eyes, and half off of knowledge of character design as someone who's been making art for over a decade. Is it too much? Is it not enough? Too vague? Too crazy? Too busy? The better the balance on the design, the higher rank it gets. Creativity. How good the design of the Robot Master utilizes the concept it's based on. If Brickman is literally just a brick, well, it might be funny, but it's not particularly creative. Purpose. What they were built to do, and how much sense it makes to have a whole robot for that purpose. You won't be getting scored very high if you have a lame-ass purpose. Personality. This one's a little more subjective, and ranking this one is based on how much I like the personality of the Robot Master, on top of how well the personality fits the design of the Robot Master. Some Robot Masters have less outwardly described personality than others, so I'll try my best to even the playing field for the less expressive ones. Weapon. What kind of weapon they use, and how interesting or cool it is. Pretty simple. Music. How good their stage theme is. Again, more personal preference. But I'm trying to stay unbiased. If a song is repetitive and boring, it's not getting a very high score. Safety. How safe or hazardous a Robot Master would be in any scenario that's not their explicit purpose. There are a surprising amount of fire hazards in the Robot Master catalog, so this is going to be the one that most Robot Masters get scored fairly low on. Intimidation. How imposing and fear-inducing the robots may be, regardless of their initial purpose. In the context of the story of the games, they're villains you're fighting, so the more imposing the better. Utility. How useful they would be in the average person's daily life, like how the aforementioned Brickman would make your life easier by lifting furniture or something. And finally, the inevitable preference stat, because I could not think of a 10th stat that is, intelligent. This is my main line of subjectivity where my own feelings have complete control. I just give some extra points based on how much I personally like the Robot Master overall. This is the only stat that's going to have a decimal point, as it will stop me from having a million 6-way ties for every rank on this list. Now there actually is one more stat that I thought would make for an interesting bit of information to include. Popularity. How well they are liked by the general Mega Man community. For this stat, I did a Robot Master popularity contest that got over 100 submissions, and had Mega Man fans from the Mega Man Discord and subreddit rank every Robot Master on a scale of 1 to 10. This stat originally was accounted for in the rankings, but I changed my mind about making it affect the overall score because the polls added a sort of objectivity to this ranking that is more or less my subjective opinion in every other facet. I didn't want to leave it out though, because that's pretty valuable information to have. So it'll be a neat little extra number to compare and contrast their actual scores with at the end of each ranking. I'll try to keep every Robot Master brief, but I simply have to explain my methods. Yeah, even if I spend 60 seconds on every Robot Master, this would be an hour and a half at least, not counting intro and outro stuff. So, I have decided to split this into rankings of each individual game to form a series of videos, because I cannot imagine the burnout my brain would face trying to edit a video that's an hour and a half or longer. Maybe once I finish the entire ranking, I'll combine all of the videos together. We'll see. We shall be going over every Robot Master in the order of appearance, and then I'll list them in order of lowest to highest score at the end. Without further ado, let's go! Starting with Megaman 1, obviously. Cutman! DWN number 003. Now, already some of you might be confused. If you're wondering what happened to the first two Robot Masters, you'd be a real dummy, because there's actually 3 before Cutman. Protoman is number 0, Megaman is number 1, and Roll is number 2. I excluded them from this list because they would dominate this tier list, considering they're like the most popular characters in the franchise. Same goes for Bass, who isn't really a part of the whole Robot Master list, but I know he'll be mentioned in the comments if I didn't do it myself. Anyways, I'm getting sidetracked. Cutman. In terms of design, Cutman is very appealing. Very clearly limited by the hardware the first game is on, but the red, orange, and white make for a very striking color scheme that differentiate him from the other Robot Masters in this game. Good work was done on Cutman. I'll give him a 7. When it comes to creativity, though, the only real thing that conveys that he's Cutman is the big pair of scissors slapped on his head, which is probably the best they could do on such small sprite art. But that doesn't excuse it completely. I'll give him a 5 here. For purpose, Cutman was designed as a timber-felling robot, which is made comedic due to the fact that he does his job with a pair of scissors, so 7 for purpose. And while we're here, using a pair of scissors like a boomerang is quite the fun way for them to be utilized in combat, so that's a 6 for weapon. For personality, he is described as cunning and stubborn, as well as terrible at the game rock, paper, scissors, which is more funny to me than it should be, so I'll give him a 7 in that category. For safety, things might get a little precarious, as Cutman basically has blades on his head at all times, but otherwise, he's a pretty normal guy, so 6. For intimidation, Cutman is unfortunately falling a little short. It's hard to be all that afraid of the babyface and scissor head combo, so that's a 4 for him. And for utility, Scissors is Scissors, and on top of that, Cutman is fairly human-sized, so he could help with little chores around the house, as long as you wrap his scissors up in something to keep them from digging into the low-hanging ceilings. Next is the music, and honestly, most of the compositions in Mega Man 1 are pretty good. I would expect them to be a lot more repetitive since they're on such limited hardware, but Manami Matsumae did an excellent job. That's an 8. And as for preference, just look at this guy. He's so silly. I'll give him an 8. 0.83. Yeah, that's about right. So, all in all, Cutman's score adds up to 63.83%. An above average score to start off this list. Not bad. And in the popularity polls, Cutman got a 72%, which is on the higher end of the popularity scores. I'm surprised by the gap between my score and the result of the polls. Maybe I'm just more critical. Though he is from the first game, so he's had a lot more time to show off his personality and gain a following. Anyways, we've only just begun. It's taken this long for just Cutman, and there's 7 left in the first game alone. Now you guys can see why I'm splitting this into a series of videos. Let's move on to the next one. Gutsman! To start, I quite like this design. In the original game, they probably couldn't make Gutsman that much bigger than everyone else due to hardware limitations. You're going to be hearing that phrase a lot while we talk about the first game. But as time has gone on, his proportions have been greatly exaggerated, and he has formed into a body type that I am very fond of. These sorts of beefy, chunky, large designs are some of my favorites for characters, especially when they're geometric, which is more often than not the case for robots. Also, his hard head is cute. Gutsman gets a 9 for design. As for creativity, I guess this is about as good as you could do with the concept of guts for a Robot Master, aside from just making him like a bodybuilder or intestines or something. The tough worker type with the oversized jaw is a very strong direction to take the phrase guts. So 7 for creativity. For purpose, he was built for land reclamation and construction, and his personality plays into that idea, being described as your standard construction foreman, which, I mean, is accurate given the way he looks. So, Gutsman is hardworking, occasionally brash, but otherwise a good guy. I'll give him a 7 for purpose and an 8 for personality. As for his weapon, Gutsman uses his mighty strength to pull a cube of earth out of the ground, or lift up any nearby rocks, really, and toss them at whatever sorry sap is closest. Now, technically, the super arm isn't really a weapon, it's just Gutsman's super strength, but personally, super strength is a really cool power, especially if you use it to pull cubes of earth out and huck it at randos. I'll give this weapon an 8. For safety, I could honestly see him being more dangerous than the average Robot Master given his immense size. He may knock you on your ass by accident if he's not looking, so I'll give him a 5, just be careful. For intimidation, this is a big step up from Cutman, just from the size alone. I'll give him an 8. For utility, I'll have to give him another 8, because despite his size, he could be awful useful for moving heavy stuff and, general landscaping. Both of which are pretty non-specific abilities many people need use for. Next up is music, and Gutsman's theme is serviceable. It's a nice little tune, but in my opinion it's a little bit too short. It's kind of repetitive. Not the type I could listen to on repeat like some of the other Robot Master themes, so I'll give him a 6 there. And finally, the preference stat. Now, one thing you're going to learn during this series is that I have a favorite Robot Master from each game. So each of my favorite Robot Masters per game is going to get a big shiny gold star, granting them a big fat 10 in the preference stat. This will only be once per video, so each of my favorites from each game gets their own little spotlight, but yeah, Gutsman gets a perfect 10. I love me a big beefy robot. So, tallying up the numbers, Gutsman gets a final score of 76%. A significant improvement from Cutman, and well warranted in my opinion. Looking at the results of the popularity poll, however, there's a slight gap. 70% from the poll's results. Honestly, I was not expecting Gutsman to be ranked that high anyways, but I'm not sure why. Granted, he's one of the better Robot Masters in Mega Man 1, so it's not that surprising. I'm glad it's not a super low number, but it being that high is enough to make me raise my eyebrow. In summary, quite fond of this gentleman, a standout from the first game's cast in my opinion. Iceman! As a design, Iceman looks pretty simple, but again, I can't really fault them that much. They're from an old-ass game, hardware limitations, blah 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 blah. Blue and white is a good color scheme, and it doesn't really step on the toes of the other Robot Masters. I like his big poofy hood. It's very cute. So I'll give him a 5. For creativity, I mean, personally, I'm not so sure about this design. It's a pretty decent idea, dressing him up for cold weather with his general body structure, but I guess I like it more when they look like robots more than people. I'll give him a 4. For purpose, Iceman was built to perform human-like tasks in extreme climate conditions, both hot and cold, which I'll admit is a pretty good purpose for an autonomous robot. That gets him an 8. And for personality, apparently he's a self-centered show-off, which I did not read at all from the design, but fair enough. It's in his programming, not mine. He also likes doing anything related to the cold and disliking heat-related things, which makes sense, just a little unsurprising. That's a 6. In terms of weaponry, Iceman uses the Ice Slash, a sharp ice blade launched from his mouth that can freeze anything with its temperature of 200 degrees below zero. I forgot if that was either Fahrenheit or Celsius, but whatever. I like the unique way Iceman creates the blade, and a freezing wind-like blade is much better than some kind of snowball or regular icicle attack. Big fan of the Ice Slash, that's a 7. For safety, I'm giving him an 8. Aside from the freezing winds he blows out, Iceman is relatively harmless. And for utility, that's a 9. He's essentially a more durable and kinda short dude that can do odd jobs for you no matter the season. For intimidation, that's a 2. Look at this little baby man. Itty bitty baby, aww. For music, I think it starts off pretty strong and dynamic, but the pitch of the main melody is just a little too high, and that's kind of grating to me. I'm not the biggest fan of that specific part of the song, but aside from that, it's fine. Just a little plain, so 5. And finally, the preference stat. And personally, I think he's fine. He's not my first choice, but I'm not turning my nose up when I see him. He gets a 5.67, sure. So, rounding the numbers together gives Iceman a total score of 59.67%. When I was tallying the numbers, I didn't think that his total was going to be that low, but I guess that's just what happens to the average when you have a score of 2 in any of your categories. Anyways, compared to the popularity poll, Iceman is fairly popular. 63%. He's not reaching the 70% barrier like the last 2 Robot Masters, but still above average. In summary, Iceman is a perfectly fine Robot Master, but I feel like he's very quickly overshadowed by other future cold-themed Robot Masters. A cutie pie through and through, though. Moving on. Bomb Man! Should I feign excitement? For both design and creativity, I'm giving Bomb Man a 3. His color scheme is kind of stepping on Gutsman's toes with the yellow, red, and black, and his design is just a bomb with arms, legs, and a mohawk. He looks more like a low-level badnik than a proper Robot Master, although I do like that his mohawk was supposedly inspired by Mr. T. Regardless, I pity this fool. Bomb Man's purpose is demolition and land development, and I'm not sure what else he's supposed to add to land other than craters. But Bomb Man's gonna need all the help he can get in this ranking, so I'll give him a 7. For personality, he is described as a rebellious type, similar to a teenager. From the specifics in the description given from the Megaman knowledge base, the first character to come to mind is Ryuji from Persona 5, which is a very humorous personality to attribute to this body type. Yeah, I'm obsessed with Persona 5, so what? Anyways, it's a fine personality, I'll give it a 5. And as for weapon, it's a bomb. Surprise, but not just any bomb. A hyper bomb! Wow! That's amazing! 3. For utility, I guess Bomb Man could have some niche use, if you don't mind your house exploding. I'll give him a 4 there. For intimidation, he's a little too dumpy to be very scary, as long as you ignore his explosive weapon, so that's another 4. And as for safety, dude, his name is Bomb Man. 1. His music is fine, just not what I'd expect from someone as explosive as him, which I'll admit is pretty novel, so I'll give it a 6. And lastly, preference. I'm not fond of Bomb Man at all, really, and to express my distaste, I give the boy a big fat 1.04. So, tally time. We've got ourselves a total of 37.04% for Bomb Man. This score is about expected, though I was not anticipating this low of a score. I thought all the original Robot Masters would break 50, but not this guy. The popularity poll shared my initial sentiment, though, giving Bomb Man a clean and even 50%, which I think is fair. He's a very middling Robot Master. Not very much to say, he's just kind of mediocre. Not very fond of him. Let's move on. Fireman! One of the more interesting Robot Master designs from the first game. The red and gray make for a nice contrast for the design and the other Robot Masters. And all the other things like having no hands, the weird chimney on his head doubling as a knight's helmet, and his mouth being covered to add to his uniqueness. That's a 6 for him. For creativity, I'm honestly not sure. Having his head be a flame was probably pretty predictable, but I do like the way they went about it, so I'll give him a 6 here as well. His purpose is to work in an incinerator at a waste management facility, which, you know what? I'm not sure what else a guy that shoots fire would do, but he subverted my expectations anyways, so I'll give him an 8 for not just being built as like, he has the power to shoot fire, which doesn't really have a safe use. For personality, Fireman sees himself as a hero, obsessed with the flames of justice. And it's that kind of corny anime talk that I love in characters like this. Plus it fits with his head basically having a medieval knight helmet on it, so that's a 9. For his weapon, he emits a large wall of fire called the Firestorm, and if you can't see why that's badass, you are a big fool. Try and be that, Mario, with your wimpy little blip blips, blip blips. That's a 7. In terms of safety, yeah, he's kind of on fire at all times, so 3. For intimidation, that fire and night helmet are pretty frightening, as well as the speeches I assume he shouts before battle. So that's a 7. For utility, I'm not so sure. His flames might be of some use to maybe some grill master dad, but the flames constantly spewing out of his head and his figurative and literal hot temper do not seem to be the most useful for the average Joe. So I'll give him a 5. For his music, it's pretty good. I like that melody in the second half of the song. Probably feels like the most fitting theme to give to a Robot Master in this game, maybe only second to Cutman. And for preference, I'm fond of Fireman. I was not as big of a fan before hearing more about his personality, but he's grown on me. I'll give him a 7.1. So, in total, Fireman racks up a total of 65.1%. About what I expected. This guy's pretty cool. And this is the closest my rank has coincided with the popularity poll results, sitting just 3 points away at 68%. I'm glad we're in agreement there, I suppose. To make a long story short, I'm a fan of this fiery fellow. One of my favorites from the first game. Next. And last, but certainly not least, we have the most overrated Robot Master of the first game. Okay, so I don't hate Megaman, but I personally do not understand the universal love for this guy. He's fine, but no better or worse than the other Robot Masters from the first game. I'm getting sidetracked. In terms of design, he kinda shares a color scheme with Gutsman and Bombman, but unlike that idiot Bombman, he doesn't look as similar because of his focus on making black the primary color in his palette. I'll give him a 6. As for creativity, I think the lightning bolts on his head and chest are a little on the nose, but I'd rather those than them going overboard and putting lightning bolts everywhere. I'll give him a 5. Megaman was created to control the voltage of nuclear power plants, which is cool. I like that it's more specific than just controlling electricity for any old place, so I'll give him a 7. For personality, he's almost villainous, being egotistical, conceited, and sadistic, which I guess is fitting, considering he's a villain in the game. It's also fitting for his appearance, since he looks the most villainous out of the first generation of Robot Masters. That's another 7. For his weapon, the Thunder Beam, why is it called the Thunder Beam if it shoots lightning? Is Dr. Light Dr. Stupid? That's a 6. For safety and utility, I'll give him a 7 and a 9. Megaman doesn't seem like the reckless type, so I feel like he would be able to control his very useful power to great benefit. Just don't get too close to him while he's shooting electricity. For intimidation, yeah, sure, I'll give it to you. He's above average in terms of scary, at least compared to dweebs like Iceman and Bombman. That's a 6 for him. For his music, I was expecting something a little more villainous sounding, but I'm not complaining. Sounds nice, albeit a little bit short. It also sounds like Faithfully by Journey, but most people know that by now, and I can't really play that in the video without the video getting, demonetized. Anyways, I'll give it a 6. For preference, I like other Robot Masters more, and even other electric-based Robot Masters more than him. So 4.55 for him. Now then, it's time for the math. Megaman managed to scrounge up a total of 63.55%, despite my general apathy towards him. Quite a difference from the popularity poll results. I wasn't kidding when I said he's overrated, because there's an over 11% difference between those results and my ranking. 74% for Megaman just seems excessive, but it's not too much of a bother for me. If people like him, that's fine. He's just not for me. And that's the last of the Megaman 1 Robot Masters. So, video over, yeah? Nah, those are the last ones from the initial game. We've got 2 more to talk about. Let me break it down for you. So, while they were working on a remake of the first Megaman game called Megaman Power Up, the fellers at Capcom figured it wasn't right that every other Megaman game had 8 Robot Masters and the first game was stuck with a puny 6. So they made up 2 more, and I thought they would be fun to include in this list. So I put them here because this is my channel and you'll watch whatever slop I put out. Isn't that right? Anyways, let's get to the next robot guy. I'm getting tired. This has been a long recording. The first of our last duo is Time Man. Aside from the silly clock on his chest that's about to fall off, I quite like this design. Despite him being made way later than the other Robot Masters he's grouped up with, he fits in surprisingly well. Most of the Mega Man 2 Robot Masters are upgrades of the first, like Metal Man is a better Cut Man, Quick Man is a better Elect Man, Crash Man is a better Bomb Man, etc. So giving Flash Man a predecessor without making it feel forced is really cool, and makes him fit in with the original generation better. I don't think there's enough visual difference in the purples of design to be as similar as the original Robot Masters, but the yellow metal in his design sort of makes up for that. Also, I love the little alarm clock on his head. That's a 9. For creativity, making Time Man just a clock is a little weak. That doesn't mean I don't like it, it's just predictable. But to be fair, I don't know what else you could do. Regardless, 4. His purpose is a little more obtuse than the other Robot Masters, being more experimental than anything else. He was designed as a prototype for a time travel device, but all he does is just slow down time with his power, so he was considered a failure. And that is a very cool purpose/backstory. I love it when they do the experimental Robot Master thing. It gives them way more room to get weird with him. That's an 8. And his purpose plays directly into his personality. Because of his existence as a failed experiment, he has a bit of an inferiority complex, which I think is fitting and very nice and cool. Especially for someone that looks as stupid as him. That's another 9. His weapon is the Time Slow, which is your standard make the enemy go slow sort of thing, but I like the little ripply effect they put on it while you're using it. That's neat, so I'll give it a 7. For safety and utility, he gets a 9 and a 10. All he really does is slow down time, which is already incredibly useful on its own. And I can't imagine much going wrong unless this guy decides to randomly double-cross you because you make fun of his big bald head or something. And for intimidation, yeah, that's not really happening. That's a 4. As for his music, he actually doesn't really have a classic version of his theme since he originates from the remake, which makes his theme much higher fidelity compared to the others. Although, there is a demake of his theme from a YouTuber named bsoulmaz13 that does a pretty good job at interpreting the new theme in the original game. I'll link it in the description. But anyways, Time Man's theme is quite good. Finally, we have preference, and if I hadn't already given Gutsman my 10 of the video, it would be going to Time Man. So I'll give Time Man a 9.05. Poor guy, he's being starved. Anyways, total time. Time Man gets a score of 77.05%, the highest score we've gotten from Mega Man 1, even higher than Gutsman. However, this I was not expecting. The majority of Mega Man fans are not fond of this guy. Time Man got a 48% in the popularity polls, which I could not conceive of such a low score for him on my own. Unthinkable. I'm more than happy to be in the minority in this opinion, though. I love Time Man. Now then, we go into the last Robot Master of the first game, and oh boy, is this a doozy. Oil Man. Oh boy, oh boy. Oil Man, huh? Quite the character here. So, about this design, what I want to know is what the hell were they thinking with this guy? Like, sure, his head is a drop of oil and his arm is a gas pump. That's fine at all. But why would they go for this face? And the donut lips? In this color? Sure, they changed it in the American release, so it looks more like a duckbill than blackface. I wonder why they would change it. Maybe because it's terrible and shouldn't have looked that way in the first place? That's a 1 for design and 3 for creativity. Anyways, the best part of him is his purpose, where he was designed to make a fuel that can work with any machinery, which is pretty cool, but not enough to justify the rest of this. He gets a 6 for purpose. His personality is described as being like Bomb Man, but more laid back, which is whatever. I'll give him a 5. His weapon is an oil slick, which is about the same as dropping banana peels, which would be cool for a Monkey Man, but not quite for this guy. That's a 3. For safety, I would not feel very safe around the guy who is basically made of a super flammable material like that, so that's a 4 there. For utility, I cannot deny the immense usefulness of a universal fuel, but this 10 I'm giving him is his one saving grace. As for intimidation, yeah, no, 3. For his music, I am not fond of this at all. The demake version made by bsoulmaz13 helps a little bit, but it does not save the song for me. It's a bad one. That's a 2. And as for preference, well, I suppose I can't give him a flat 0, so how about 0.01? Yeah, that works. So in total, Oilman unsurprisingly misses the bar with a pitiful 35.01%. I'll genuinely be surprised if we see a score lower than that in this series. As for the popularity poll, we're just about in agreement. They're only 2 points away at 37%. A bit too high, in my opinion. I've spoken about Oilman all I can for this video. I'm gonna go vomit into a trash can. But yeah, that's all of Mega Man 1's Robot Masters completed. This has been quite the elaborative journey through my opinions so far, so let's see the scoreboard. The inner rankings of the first game's Robot Masters are, from worst to best, Oilman, Bomb Man, Iceman, Elec Man, Cutman, Fireman, Gutsman, and Time Man by a measly 1.05 points. And the combined score of these 8 Robot Masters was 473.25 for those keeping score at home. And with that, we have positioned them all in the rankings of this auspicious army of automatons. Wow! It took this long to get one of the games out of the way. This is going to be a long and arduous series, I think. For my fingers, anyways. Writing these scripts is going to be rough. In any case, that's the end of the video, so stick around to look at some cool fan art while I do some general housekeeping stuff. Follow my socials, or I guess just social now. TikTok's probably gone by the time this video comes out, so all I really have is Blue Sky. And I'm still dawdling around on the corpse of Twitter, so there's that too, I guess. I'd also recommend joining the Discord server, the Hoose of Goose. All the cool people who also happen to be subscribed to me hang out in there, and it's so cool and awesome. You'd love it. Consider becoming a headliner, maybe. That's what I call YouTube channel members because I think it sounds cooler, and it does. You get some perks, like your name in the credits with a doodle, first access to new uploads, emotes on stream, access to polls voting on what videos come out next, and a special channel only headliners can access in the aforementioned Discord server. As for fan art, if you'd like to see your art of me or my friends all rounded up here, then make sure to either tag me on the socials I mentioned or post it in the fan art channel in the Discord server. I'll put them in the rotation for future uploads. I think that's everything from me. Can't think of much else to plug. So, without further ado, my name is Goose. I thank you very much for watching. And, yeah, strap in. This one's gonna be a while. Now get lost!